Welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Today we'll be talking economics and we'll be looking at the subject of the types of elasticity of demand, the factors that determine elasticity of demand, or what sometimes we refer to as the determinants of elasticity of demand, and the importance of elasticity of demand. So first, let's look at the specific learning objectives. At the end of this session, I expect that you will identify and explain the types of elasticity with the aid of diagrams. So by just looking at diagrams, you'll be able to tell the type of elasticity. You'll be able to explain the importance on the value of the coefficient of elasticity, and you would also be able to explain the determinants of elasticity of demand. What are the factors that determine elasticity of demand, and be able to tell the importance of elasticity to the consumer, the government, and to producers as well. So let's delve in and look at the types of elasticity of demand. Now, first, we remember that elasticity measures the extent or degree of responsiveness of change in the quantity demanded of a commodity to the factors that influence demand or quantity demanded. These factors include the price of the commodity, the income of the consumer, and also the price of a different commodity, which could be a substitute or a complement. So, first we look at elastic demand. We say demand is elastic if a small change in price, a small percentage change in price, leads to an even larger or bigger or greater percentage change in the quantity demanded of that product. Diagrammatically, it is represented as a gentle sloping demand curve, where change in price from P1 to P2, which is rather small, leads to a larger change in the quantity demanded of the commodity or the product from D1 to D2. So if this, for example, were a 10% change in price, the change in quantity demanded here could be about 40% or more. So we say a small change in price leads to a larger change in the quantity demanded of the commodity. Where that is the case, we say demand for that commodity is elastic. And the coefficient of elasticity is greater than 1. So when you calculate the ratio of the change in quantity demanded to the ratio of the change in price of that commodity, you get a value that is greater than 1. These are characteristics: the gentle sloping demand, the gently sloping demand curve, the coefficient of elasticity greater than 1 are features that identify elastic demand. And it is simply that a small percentage change in price leads to a larger percentage change in quantity demanded. Then we look at inelastic, the opposite. Inelastic demand. Inelastic demand is where a larger change in the factor influencing the demand, price for example, leads to a smaller change in the quantity demand in the quantity demanded of the product. So if we have a case where a 40% change in price leads to the reverse, a 10% change in quantity demanded, then we say we have inelastic demand. Note that this factor could also be income, such that you have a small change in income leading to a smaller proportionate change in quantity demanded. Okay, it is also inelastic demand. So you could have inelastic demand for income, you could have inelastic demand for price, and you could also have inelastic demand for a substitute or a complement. The coefficient of elasticity T is less than 1 for inelastic demand, and the slope of the demand curve is very steep, as is shown in the diagram. We have a very steep demand curve. Third, we have the unity or unitary elastic demand. And like the name, the name goes, it is a case where a percentage change in price leads to an exact same percentage change in quantity demanded. So if you have a 20% change in price, you are going to get a 20% change in quantity demanded. If it is a 5% change in price, you get a 5% change in quantity demanded. And as a result of that, the coefficient of elasticity is equal to 1, unity. And that's where the name comes from, unity. And essentially, it's an evenly sloping demand curve. The fourth is perfectly elastic or infinitely elastic demand, where price affects quantity demanded infinitely. So at a given price, you have an infinite possibility of quantities demanded. Okay? And that is characterized by a horizontal demand curve. Right? So this is a case of an abnormal demand where price has infinite impact on the quantity demanded of the product. Coefficient of elasticity is infinity and the slope is horizontal. Sorry, the demand curve is horizontal. And finally, we have the perfectly inelastic or zero elastic demand, where a change in the factor influencing demand has practically no effect on quantity demanded, meaning that irrespective of the price of that product, the same quantity of the product will be demanded or consumed by the user. And you have a demand curve that is vertical. So if we are looking at price, then at different prices of the commodity, the same quantity is demanded. And for this demand curve, the coefficient of elasticity is 0, and the demand curve is vertical. So we've looked at 5 different types of elasticities: the elastic demand, the inelastic demand, the unitary or unity elastic demand. We have looked at the perfectly or infinitely elastic demand, and we have also seen the perfectly inelastic or zero elastic demand. For the elastic demand, a small change in price or a given change in price leads to a larger change in quantity demanded. A given change in income leads to a larger quantity demanded, meaning that if you have a 5% change in price, you get a larger percentage, 20%, 15%, 30% change in quantity demanded. A 5% change in income leads to a larger proportionate change, maybe 30% change in quantity demanded, and you say demand is elastic. And when you determine the coefficient of elasticity, it is greater than 1. For inelastic demand, a small change or a given change in price leads to a larger change, percentage change in quantity demanded. So if you have, a small change in price leads to a lesser change in quantity demanded. That's for inelastic. Meaning that if you have a 10% change in price, you are going to get like a 3% or 5% or 7% change in quantity demanded. Same for income, okay? And coefficient of elasticity is less than 1 for inelastic demand. For unity elasticity or for unity elastic demand, you get the same percentage change in quantity demanded given a percentage change in price. So if you have a 20% change in price, then you are going to get a 20% change in quantity demanded. and the coefficient of elasticity is equal to 1. For infinitely elastic demand, what you have is that a given price gives you an infinite possibilities of quantities demanded, and coefficient of elasticity is infinity. The demand curve is horizontal. For zero elastic demand or perfectly inelastic demand, is the same thing, perfectly inelastic or zero elastic demand, at different prices or different price ranges, the quantity demanded is unaffected by price changes or by any of the other factors that influence demand. And the coefficient of elasticity is 0. The demand curve is vertical. Next, we look at the factors that influence elasticity, or what usually we refer to as the determinants of elasticity of demand. Availability of close substitutes will affect the elasticity of demand for a product. What are close substitutes? In economics, we refer to close substitutes as those commodities or goods that can be used in place of a given commodity. For example, if you look at detergents, you have different types. So one detergent can be easily used in place of another. So you have detergent A, not available, then you go for detergent B. They do the same thing for you. So you're actually indifferent as to which one you use. Those are very close substitutes. So if you have a close substitute for a product, it affects the elasticity of demand for that, or it determines the elasticity. Meaning that if the price of one changes, say a detergent A, if the price of detergent A changes, say by 20%, goes up by 20%, if it does not affect the price of if the price of the other one is not affected, you simply go for it. So the elasticity or the response that you give to substitutes, the response you give to substitutes is one of the determinants of the elasticity of the demand for that particular commodity or those substitutes. Next is the income of the consumer. What you earn, what is available to you to spend on your consumption determines, or is a determinant, or is a factor that influences elasticity. Okay, depending on your income, you respond to the consumption or the quantity of a product you consume, given the factors that impact demand, whether price or your income. If the level of your income is high, you may be indifferent to changes in price. However, if income is low, then you are greatly affected by changes in price of a commodity. The next is the nature of the commodity. What type of commodity is it? Is it a product that is durable? Or is it a product that you use and change often? That also determines elasticity. Meaning that for how long can you use it? How often do you have to buy it? Okay, so the nature of the commodity determines whether the elasticity is elastic. Your response to it is high or low, elastic or inelastic. Okay? The consumer's habit. Again, economics is not an exact science, it's a social science which essentially delves or focuses on our psychological feeling. So our habit to consumption also will affect how we respond, or in other words, the quantity that we demand of given commodities per time. The price level, of course, the price level of a commodity affects elasticity. Price elasticity, that is very straightforward. Then the nature of the commodity, whether it is a luxury or a necessity. Is this something that you need, or is this something that you just want to have? Is it a want or a need? Is it a desire? Is this something that is outside of your reach? That determines how you respond to the consumption of that commodity. And then we talk about the importance of elasticity of demand. Elasticity is very useful in the determination of pricing of products. For example, you talk about the determining the price of a commodity is is based on the elasticity for that commodity. If you know as a producer, for instance, that the demand for your commodity is price elastic, meaning that a simple change or a small change in the price will affect the quantity of that commodity of your product that will be demanded, then you are very careful about your pricing. So in setting pricing or in setting your price, in pricing strategy for a producer, it is important to check the elasticity of demand for that commodity. You can, as a producer, increase your price if the demand for your product is price inelastic, for instance. So it is important in the determination of price of commodities, products that are jointly used. Okay, if you must, for example, for someone who owns a car and would maintain or change the oil of the car, each time you buy engine oil, you have to also buy the filter. So this must be jointly used. So for jointly used products like that, the elasticity of demand helps to determine the price of the commodity. You know that if the price of one goes up, the price of the other can equally go up. It will not affect demand, depending on the elasticity. Then for a monopoly, I'm the only one that supplies the product. You are the only one in the market. The elasticity of demand helps you to set your price, again, in the market. Then it also helps in determination of the price for factors of production, labor, okay, interest rates. The elasticity of demand for the commodity helps in the determination of this, determination of prices for all of this. Okay, now the next is the determination of output level for producers. The elasticity of demand for a commodity is very crucial to the producer so that they know what quantity of goods they make available to the market, what to produce, okay? Because, of course, demand determines what they sell. In order to meet up demand, elasticity determines what happens in the market, and that also informs the level or the output level or production level. Then, forecasting demand. Forecasting demand is also tied. Forecasting demand is tied to determination of output level. For example, for you to be able to determine what you would make available into the market, then you need to also forecast to look at what is likely to be the demand. So elasticity of demand is important. It helps also it's important in determination of government policies, taxation for certain commodities, provision of subsidies, price controls, which kind of commodities can price controls be placed on, what level of taxation, grants and subsidies, and so on. Okay, so the concept of elasticity of demand, which ultimately leads to determining the coefficient of elasticity of demand, is very crucial in business. It is crucial to the consumer, it is crucial or important to the producer, and also very important to the government. It is not just any commodity that the government can place a subsidy on, for instance. So it is the elasticity of demand that helps to make all these decisions.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
Now, revision questions. 4 types of elasticity of demand. Top of my head, just You have elastic demand, inelastic demand, unitary elasticity, zero elasticity, or infinitely elastic demand or perfectly elastic demand. State the type of demand in the following instances. If coefficient of elasticity is 2.5, this means it is greater than 1, therefore it is elastic. Elasticity is 0.5, it is still, in this case, it is less than 1, therefore it is inelastic. 15% change in price led to 15% change in quantity demanded. So you have the same percentage change in quantity demanded initiated by a particular change in percentage change in price. Because it is the same, it is unitary elastic demand. The demand curve is vertical. When the demand curve is vertical, we are talking about zero elastic demand or perfectly inelastic demand. State 5 factors that affect elasticity of demand. What are those things that affect elasticity of demand? Price of the commodity, the habit of the consumer, right? And all those factors that we mentioned. What is the importance of elasticity to the producer and the government? We've seen that for the producer, it helps in price determination and output level determination, and for the government, it helps with determination of policies, certain policies like taxation, subsidies, and grants. So, at the end of this session, we've been able to achieve our highlighted objectives for the class. Thank you for listening. And if you have comments or observations, you can reach us on our social media handles displayed on the screen.